Who's the sleeper team for the Super Bowl this year in the NFL?
I want to say the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah!
Oh, my God.
Mike, did we just become best friends? Welcome back to another episode of CAPSOFF presented by The Game Day. We got a special guest today. PFF's none other than PFF's lead draft analyst, Mike Renner. Welcome on the podcast, Mike.
Thanks for having me, fellas. Excited to be here.
I botched the intro. But what else is new? I botched it.
Mike, where are you calling in from right now?
I am in Cincinnati, Ohio. That's where PFF's headquarters are. So,
oh, really?
I'm here. Yeah, for the weekend.
Ohio or Kentucky side?
The Ohio side. I mean, Cincinnati's in Ohio, so it's right downtown.
Oh, I wasn't sure if it was like there's a little suburb town next to
the owner.
Yeah.
He opened the office here. So yeah.
Skyline Chili.
So do you guys have a Bengals bias because of that, or do you guys think pretty objective?
No Bengals bias. Although I am here. If I can show, I'm like right outside the Bengals stadium right there. There's Peyton.
That's sweet.
Looking right at it.
That's sweet.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
So you don't live
really
out in
dope.
Cincinnati though, right? You're just there for work.
No, I'm in Orlando now.
Yeah, nice.
Well, what are your thoughts on
I
Skyline
love golf
Chili
too much.
then?
Oh, so I'm not an original Cincinnati. Like, I didn't grow up here.
Yeah.
And so if you didn't grow up here, you have the
trash.
same opinion of Skyline as every other normal person, which is that it's trash. I mean, it's meat water. It's not great. You would never choose to eat there, but you get forced to if you have friends that are from Cincinnati.
It makes no sense why they put it on top of noodles too. I'm like, it's not chili. Like,
I just never understood.
It's called chili because they put chili powder in it.
that's the only
initially.
reason.
That's the only reason it's called chili. It is not anything resembling
It's a meat
any
soup.
chili you've ever
It's
had.
dog water.
I've been to a few Bengals games. And I've had like the Skyline Chili dog. That's not bad because it's not on top of a bunch of noodles, but it's still not like
It all sounds
great.
disgusting.
Yeah, I was gonna say this whole thing
There's like
all sounds
cinnamon
disgusting.
sounds
in it.
terrible.
I mean, we want to get to know you a little bit. Like Adam in his intro, he said so eloquently that you are the lead. Is it ranking analyst, draft analyst at PFF? How did you get into doing that, and how did you get to your position where you are now?
So I started at PFF right out of college. I was an accounting major at Notre Dame and just basically knew I didn't want to do accounting.
Go Irish.
And so PFF, if you think back to 2012, that was over a decade ago. No one knew who the hell they were really back then. I mean, I was one of the first 10 employees even at PFF when I started, and it was part-time back then. And we had like 4 NFL clients. We really didn't have a big footprint. And so over the past decade, it just kind of grew and grew. And I didn't even start doing really media until I was probably 2 or 3 years in at PFF. And they taught me how to grade there. They taught me how to scout. At times they had various different NFL people on staff. They had Bobby Slowick, who's the OC for the Texans, on staff at one point, Zach Robinson, who's QB coach of the Rams at one point. And I just learned football from those guys and learned how to grade and then work my way up, started doing more media when Chris Collinsworth bought the company in 2015 here. That's when I moved to Cincinnati, when he opened up offices. And 2019 is when I became in charge of all our draft stuff, our draft board. Not a banner year, 2019, I'll say, for my draft rankings. But since then, they've bounced back. The last 3 years have been a lot better.
So what does go into PFF's grading system? Because I only use it when it's applicable to positive stats for some of my players and refuse to use it when it does not apply, a.k.a. an Xavier Howard being on the bottom tier of cornerbacks. So what does go into PFF grading, and how do you come up with those grades?
Yeah, we like to call them production grades. So they are kind of how you impacted what was going on in the football field. And now we're changing it this year, truthfully, full disclosure. We're changing it to more of a scouting grade.
Breaking news.
And we're kind of trying to do a balancing act on that. Like a scouting grade being like how well you executed each play from like a scouting perspective, but not necessarily how much you impacted each play. But as it stands right now, the grading is kind of like an impact score. It's like if you make how much your play actually impacted the play. And it's on a play-by-play grading system, so every single play you're getting looked at. How well did you go above and beyond the call of duty at your job on any particular play? And that's basically how it comes to the final grade you see on the website.
Interesting.
That is interesting.
So it's not like It's not like is it more of like a, I guess, equation where you pick and plug different statistics? It's not really as much as that, as much of like you guys just really breaking it down fundamentally on each play.
It's all film. It's purely based off of the film and purely based off of, like I said, the individual play-by-play grading. So we'll have one person go through immediately after a game and do all the grading, and then one person go and review that afterwards. And it takes about 5 hours for someone to do each of those jobs. So that's,
Damn.
we have one person doing pretty much working. We have a bunch of people working pretty much around the clock every Saturday, Sunday to get the college and NFL grades up by Monday.
You said that you're. Yeah, go ahead, Felipe. Let's let you chime in.
I was going to say, so after you guys do that analysis and you guys get those grades out for the different positions, you're looking, because I feel like a lot of times we look at those and we see a guy like, I'm looking at it now, Tyler Algier, or however you say it, running back for the Falcons, is up there at top 5 for running back. Is that how you guys calculate your rankings too? Obviously, like that is the grades that you guys have, but would you say that Tyler Algier, because he's has the 5th highest PFF grade, would you say he's the 5th best running back too? Or like, how does that go into your, the breakdown of rankings and positions and stuff like that?
No, so my job's different in that I'm actually doing like player evaluation. So what I kind of talked about, like the scouting, how we're kind of trying to change the grading system to match that, is we want to, I want my grades, at least for college. I don't do much like NFL stuff. I'll write about some rookies and stuff, but I want it to reflect kind of like how you would draft those guys, like how much you expect them to actually be, like if you were just drafting, doing an NFL draft. My evaluations are based off of that, who you would take first, who you would take second, who you take third. And as you mentioned there, Tyler Algier grading out top 5 does not mean that I'm taking him top 5 in this draft. And, there's different positions in this year's draft. If you look at like the collegiate grading, where the guy who was the top player at that position from a grading perspective is not necessarily going to be top center board. So like Kobe Turner from Wake Forest is a good example this year in the draft. If you look at his college grade, he's the 2nd highest graded DT this year, besides Jalen Carter from the Power 5. I'm not putting him the 2nd highest one because he's 6'2", 288, not necessarily a great athlete. So he's like lower down in the top 100 on the PFF draft board, even though his grade was awesome and he was very productive last year. So I'm trying to look at it more from like a skill set, from a talent perspective, whereas PFF grading is more just like how much did you impact on a football field. So I'm coming at it from 2 different ways.
I was about to ask. We're going to get into lots more of these college players and what you think their player comps are, but you just mentioned before that your 2019 draft board wasn't as successful, you said. So I'm curious, which NFL players did you predict correctly to be super amazing that have panned out, and any guys that were total busts that you thought were going to pan out better?
I'm trying to think. So we were high on Baker Mayfield. That one was always weird to me. Like his rookie year and then his career arc has been just
weird.
So weird
case study. And it just, no one really knows what happened, what the hell happened to Baker Mayfield. But he's one guy we went to bat for as the number 1 pick that year. Obviously ends up going number 1. So it's not like it was a stark disagreement, but he obviously didn't live up to that hype. I'm trying to think of guys we were super high. So Grady Jarrett, Falcons DT, we called the 1st rounder. That was our very first year of doing PFF college grading. I know Chris Jones, we had like 10th on our board that year. I'm trying to think of who else. We had DK Metcalf. So 2019 draft, I had DK Metcalf and AJ Brown as wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 in that draft class. And obviously that one's looked better than Marquise Brown and N'Keal Harry, who were the actual wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 off the board for the NFL.
The Ole Miss boys.
That's a good one. I don't know. I'm trying to think. I don't try to I hate the people that go and pump out all their hits, because no one knows, no one actually is going, batting like 95% here. We're all hovering around like 50 to 60%. You're just like splitting hairs between a lot of draft people's rankings. So if anyone goes and tells you that that they know more than anyone else, they're probably lying.
This is your year, Mike. This is your year. I promise.
I mean, that's a D. I mean, I got through college
32
with
for
D's.
32 on the first round.
Yeah,
I have D pluses.
Yeah, I got through college with D's
That's a
and
D.
D
It's a
pluses.
passing
I mean,
grade.
it's a passing grade. It's pretty much a salad. You mentioned though, and I want to tee up Jack on this one. You mentioned out of college, you went straight to PFF. But I don't know if this was during college or after college. But a quick Google search would tell us that you had a quick stint on The Bachelor or The Bachelorette, or one of them.
The Bachelor is where he'd be the only one, which would be way cooler.
Yeah, that's
but The Bachelorette's still pretty cool too. So
yeah, tell us a little bit about that and how that went down.
I want to know from the beginning. Did you sign yourself up? Did a buddy of yours do it? And how'd that whole selection process for being on The Bachelorette go?
So you were correct. It was a quick stint. It was, if you blinked, you probably missed me.
3 episodes? Oh, it's all there.
Jack did his research. By the way, Jack.
Actually, so they split up the rose ceremony, so I actually snuck into the 4th episode.
It says week 3, but it's really week 4.
You were one of the guys they left on a cliffhanger, like, will Mike get past this rose ceremony?
Exactly. And then Mike did get asked. But so it started because I was at actually a Notre Dame football game the fall prior, ran into one of my buddies who lived out in San Diego, and he had, he was telling me that he was supposed to be on this past season. Someone brought it up, and he was supposed to be on the past season, which was Rachel Lindsay's season.
Good season.
And he couldn't do it with work. He was a baseball agent at the time. And I was like, how'd you even go about doing that? And he's like, just through my work, I meet people, out in the West Coast, and knew some of the producers. And I was like, well, can you put me in touch? I'd be down. Cause I'd actually watched that season and the season prior. Cause it was hot back then. That was probably the peak of it.
That was prime
and then my
time
season was the downfall. Yeah. Once I got on, they're like, this show sucks. So, it was, he put me in touch, and it was not a difficult process. They kind of just sent me back a couple questionnaires, and the next thing I knew, I was flying out to LA for final casting.
Did you have a go-to sob story? Because I feel like everyone always that they cast on The Bachelor has something that they always just go into way too hard. The producers, it's crazy.
That was probably my problem. Was I had nothing interesting about me whatsoever, because I
just
go
a
on
normal
there,
happy guy.
and I was thinking I'm going to be, the guy who works in sports, the guy who works in football, whatever. And then they have 2 NFL players on my season, and I immediately get cucked. And that they're just talking about those guys being in the NFL, and I'm like, I watch these guys.
My job is to analyze these guys' every move.
Do you think? We can pull up the picture later too. Do you think it had to do with the Tarzan haircut? Maybe not getting
thought
further.
You looked great with the Tarzan cut, personally.
The long hair was bad.
All right. We're bringing him back to a dark place. We don't mean to put you back into that, man.
It's all right if we bring back the dark
place.
But
I grew it out for 5 years. I had that.
5 years.
I think
it's a year and a half of that, it wasn't long, but then 3.5 years, I probably had it long, where I'd put it up in a bun. Thankfully, once COVID hit, I was like, I'm done with this. That's it.
Good call. All right. Well, thanks for shedding.
Yeah, that's cool.
I could keep asking you about this for probably an hour, to be honest.
Episode, honestly.
But I'm sure everyone's turned off the soda by now.
No, that's what makes our show fun. But we will move into some football stuff again. There's been a lot of player comps being made for the top guys in this NFL draft. So we want to hear your player comp and what you've seen with these guys. So we're gonna go through. I got a list of 7 or 8 guys, and we'll go through and you'll give us who you think that player should be compared to. What NFL player these college prospects should be compared to. So we'll start with the big guys. We'll start with Bryce Young. Who do you think is Bryce Young's NFL player comp?
There really isn't one, right? I in the draft guide, I said, and I don't want to even put this on him, but I said smaller Deshaun Watson. I'm talking about on field, obviously.
On the field.
Of course. On the field.
Not a lot of smaller Deshaun Watsons off the field, let's just say, in this class.
Play on the
field. But he, that's just kind of the creativity that Deshaun has, the ability to just sense pressure and get out of tight quarters.
On the field.
It's really reminiscent. Now, I think Deshaun's probably got maybe a little stronger arm and obviously more prototypical frame. And Young's such an outlier that I don't care who you comp him to. It's not going to look good, right? It's not going to be inaccurate. I think people are saying Doug Flutie's the size comp for him. And even that's crazy in retrospect. It's a completely different era. Watching those two play quarterbacks just night and day, it just doesn't make sense. So there's really no good one, but that's just from a play style standpoint. That's a guy who I could see being similar stylistic.
Felipe, thoughts?
I mean, yeah, the thing about Bryce Young is I think a lot of people have been they saw how much he performed, and we had PFF Sam Munson on as well, and he just talked about his performance that nobody performed close to how Bryce Young did during his collegiate career. But then there's the knock on his size. So obviously, like you said, Deshaun Watson has a prototypical size. So what do you think about the comparisons to like a Tua, a guy that's like a bit smaller, athletic as well? Obviously, there's like the Alabama connection there. How much do you think his size is going to play into his success in the league? I think.
I think the biggest thing I worry about his size is injury, and obviously with Tua, that's borne out. He has been oft injured since entering the league. But Tua is also like Tua couldn't take hits in college. He had to. What's he been doing? He's been doing like jujitsu or something to learn how to fall this offseason because
he's a black belt.
That's when he's been like screwing up, right? Because he just doesn't really know how to fall. And I will say about Bryce Young, he does not know how to slide. That's going to be a storyline for him for sure because he dives head first when he's out in space. And as much as I think the NFL now protects head first dives for quarterbacks, it's still a lot riskier than a foot first slide if you know how to slide, but he doesn't. Like he's tried before and it's not looking good. So that's the one thing I worry about is that guy that size, he's going to take hits, and he doesn't do a great job of protecting himself as is, or at least didn't at Alabama. And so I think just that guy's going to get banged up. You're too small to be getting, sat on by 350-pounders weekly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, checks out. Definitely hurt my team, the size.
Adam's a big Dolphins fan, so he's a Tua stan until he dies.
Until we get Lamar.
Lamar comes.
Until Tua dies.
Oh God. Yeah, no, that makes sense though.
Sorry.
All right, the next player on my list is what is C.J. Stroud's NFL player comp?
This is a curious one.
Oh man, C.J. Stroud. I don't love the comps that have been thrown at. Like a lot of people said, Jared Goff. I honestly see more Ryan Tannehill with him.
Even
because
is that better?
That might be worse?
Good. Is that worse?
That's worse.
I don't think neither of them are good, right? Like I don't think Stroud really. The thing I worry about him is he's a little like robotic in nature, and he's not like he's athletic, but he's really not a runner. And that's how I feel about Tannehill, right? Like Tannehill can move when he's out in space. He doesn't necessarily scare you from a scrambling perspective. That he's going to find and be able to find that crease, get out, and run. And I saw Stroud. He did a little in the Georgia game. He's done it at times, and he definitely, if he ran a 40, I would expect it to be either somewhere in the 4.6s. Like he can actually when he's out in space move, but that's really not an aspect of his game. And he's really a pocket passer, but kind of when it starts to collapse on him, he starts playing tight and looking tight. And so that's something that's very similar to Ryan Tannehill. So I see shades of it, but again, Stroud, I'm not sure there's a really great comp for him that I felt like in the league.
Is that why there's rumors coming out now, and obviously it's always rumors, that the Texans might not end up going with a quarterback at the second pick because of the fact that the ceiling, or the consensus around the league might be that the ceiling isn't high enough on a C.J. Stroud, that they might be better off to go a Will Anderson or a defensive player to pair with the DeMeco Ryans?
Well, truthfully, I don't think they drafted Stroud because he has the same agent as Deshaun Watson, and I don't think either side wants that, right? They traded away. So they had Whitney Merciless had the same agent as Deshaun Watson, and I'm blanking on the other guy who had the same agent as Deshaun Watson, the guy Charles Menahue, and they both got traded. Last year and 2 years ago, Whitney Merciless got traded last year, and Menahue got traded. Like they don't want to deal with each other anymore. I don't think. So David Mulligetta being the agent, and I think it's a mutual sort of thing. So I think that's why if Bryce Young comes off the board. Well, they're not going to draft Stroud. And then it's like, well, do I want Will Levis and Anthony Richardson knowing that they might be projects and knowing that if I start them year one, well, then the chances are I'm drafting a guy next year in Caleb Williams. Like chances are I'm going to have the number one pick. I'm still a bad roster here in Houston. So I think that's the decision they're making right now is they're like, oh, shit, like if I don't get the guy who I think is a slam dunk in Bryce Young, and I'm obviously not going to want to deal with C.J. Stroud in that whole situation. Well, I have the number 2 pick, and I don't really love these quarterbacks in terms of value. So I think that might be the situation they're staring at. And if that's the case, it wouldn't surprise me if they trade out a number 2 if they really were only there for Bryce Young.
Wow, you heard it here first. This is what the Texans are doing on draft day.
It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, honestly, to just stink it up with Davis Mills for a year and then go get Caleb Williams or Drake May. Like,
it actually makes a lot of
And
sense.
you had one of the top prospects outside of the quarterback position. I mean, it's like what we talked about yesterday. Like, you can keep hovering. Get a quarterback. It's going to be a project. It's going to be asked next year. We saw the Cardinals do it when they drafted, Josh Rosen, and then went out and still had the number one pick, went out and took Kyler Murray. Essentially, the first-round pick they had the year before was a waste. You just wasted it on Josh Rosen. So, I mean, the Texans, that's a decision to make right there.
Yeah.
All right, the next player we got. What is Will Levis's NFL player comp?
this is boy right here.
I went in the PFF draft, I went with Jake Locker. I think if you're talking about guys right now in the NFL, which obviously Jake Locker not a great comp, but guys right now, I see a little of maybe earlier career Matthew Stafford is how I put it, in that, Stafford, when he was early in his career, had a little mobility to him. He could get out and move a little bit. Now he's really more just a pocket passer, but strong arm, like arm that really plays over the middle of the field at the intermediate level. Like, he can hit tight windows there because such quick release, such zip behind the ball, such easy zip to that level of the field, that's where his bread and butter is. And he's an athlete, and he's like really tough and can handle pressure that you'll see at the NFL level. And truthfully, was this past year, I think his pressure percentage was higher than all but like 3 NFL teams. So basically, he's going to have it easier behind whatever offensive line he goes to at the next level. But I want Jake Locker because, to me, Locker was similar in that they're both just ridiculous athletes, great size for the position, great arm talent, but inaccurate. Like, Locker he just missed throws left and right. I don't think you question a lot of other stuff about Locker, but he just missed throws. And then obviously Locker ends up kind of falling out of love with the game and retires early. But I don't expect that from Will Levis. But I do think it's just, can you fix Levis's accuracy? You promised me you could fix Levis's accuracy? That's a franchise quarterback, in my opinion. I think everything else is there but the accuracy.
How do we normalize player comps with some of like the superstar quarterbacks in today's NFL? I feel like
Because it doesn't happen. You're not going to compare
compare someone to Patrick Mahomes already. This guy's fucking Joe Burrow.
They did it with Zach. They did it with Zach Wilson, bro. If Zach Wilson was being compared to Patrick Mahomes when he was coming out, I don't want to hear those comparisons
Same
anymore.
with Trey Lance,
Facts.
bro.
Facts.
That's fair.
All right.
I have so the next 2 quarterbacks I have compared to kind of basically the top 5 quarterbacks this year. I have compared to higher end dudes in the NFL right now. For Anthony Richardson, I have Josh Allen, and for Hendon Hooker, I have Geno Smith. I think that's
Okay.
Are we talking?
So I was
Richardson,
about to move on to
no great comp, but
Are we talking early career Geno Smith or current Geno Smith?
that's the mystery. That's what
actually
NFL teams are going to have to figure out. It's somewhere probably in
part
between.
of the fun.
But he is. I mean, early career. Hendon Hooker's already 25, so I don't know if there's an early career Geno Smith there.
Do you think if Hendon Hooker didn't get hurt last year, he would have been a higher draft pick, like consensus top half of the first round?
I don't know about that.
'Cause of the
I still
age?
do think there's too many concerns about that Tennessee offense. But I would buy the first round hype. I still don't buy the first round hype right now. I still think it's crazy to draft a 25-year-old quarterback who may not play his rookie year from a ridiculous offense that he ran at Tennessee. But if he was going to be playing his rookie year and he was healthy, I would buy it. I would think he'd be a slam dunk first round.
There's a lot of people talking about Anthony Richardson. I think people have said there's a part of it that's Cam Newton. You just said Josh Allen. I mean, is Anthony Richardson worthy of the number 1 pick if that is the player comp? Obviously, there's a lot more concerns. It's not, that simple. But Anthony Richardson obviously has the highest ceiling of all the quarterbacks in this draft. So why don't we draft based off of the ceiling?
Because he sucks.
Well, one, because I think Bryce Young's I think that's doing a disservice to Young and his ceiling. I think he can be special. 2, because I think he could still go higher, right? I think he might. I think he might go 2. I think he might go 4. I think he goes highly in this draft. But he is. You're looking. The problem is you're looking at a similar situation to what the 49ers have kind of seen play out with Trey Lance, and that the guy's not played football. He's played 1 season of football at Florida with, I think, fewer than 400 career dropbacks to his name. And it just takes time at quarterback. As we saw with Hendon Hooker, year 6 is when he finally gets considered a real prospect. So Anthony Richardson could hit his ceiling. He could end up being that dude. That could be year 5 for him because he's 20 years old. He's still so raw at the position that by the time everything kind of clicks, do you have 4 years as an NFL GM? You might not. And especially when you're drafting at that point in the draft, that guy better hit quick. So I think that's the problem, is just people asking themselves when and if is he going to hit that ceiling.
Hey,
well, how far behind is he from Josh Allen? Because obviously you make the Josh Allen comparison, and a lot of people do. Because the intangibles are that, like, there's the size. Josh Allen didn't have much accuracy coming out of college. I mean, the completion percentage, we've all seen the rise throughout his career, from high school even all the way to the NFL. Mm-hmm. So what is that? How is that comparison? How can we see that?
Yeah, Josh Allen, to his credit, Josh Allen played one more football, starts, 1 or 2 years at JUCO, and then I believe 2 years at Wyoming. So played more football. And honestly did it in a situation where it was tough. You saw him just trying to keep his head above water most games. And so I think that helps quarterbacks. I think one of the biggest reasons why Ohio State quarterbacks get this knock is they almost develop bad habits because it's so easy, because they have all day back there, because they have guys running wide open. They turn down what are NFL windows because they know they can find gaping holes down the football field if they just hold on to the football. So that was something that played in Josh Allen's favor, is that he was working with nothing, and every game that he went out there, it was just on him. So, and then even him, with all that experience, it was year 3 before he became even close to a viable NFL starter. And so that's, again, I think, the reason why you're seeing that. Whereas I think even CJ Stroud, for all the knocks I just said about Ohio State's offense, you can pretty much, you'll get a level of play that is not, unplayable. Whereas Anthony Richardson, outside of his rushing ability, you could get unplayable. It could look like Zach Wilson as a passer year 1 or year 2.
Yeah, that's
not
great.
Good.
That's not great. No, it's not great. Not great. Not great at all.
I also think that probably will happen. I'm super low on it.
Yeah, it might.
But you are also the best scout.
As a University of Missouri alum, I've watched him stink it up against Mizzou. And if you are bad against Mizzou, you're really fucking bad.
Yeah.
That's just my professional opinion as a professional scout.
Yeah, Mike,
myself.
This is our lead scout here at CAPSOFF.
Eye test guy. I don't look at the stats. Just let me watch a game. Yeah. Just one, though. I don't need to do too many,
Missouri's a good litmus test, though. I do agree with that. If you stink it up against Missouri, I'm probably not drafting you too high at quarterback.
All right, see, I can talk shit on Mizzou. Now we got a bone to pick, all right?
I want to move away from the quarterback position. There are a couple of good wide receivers in this draft, too. The CAPSOFF podcast here happened to have Zay Flowers' agent on the pod last week. Shout out Zach Hiller. And he gave Zay Flowers a player comp. His player comp was that Zay Flowers is going to be better than Antonio Brown. Now, I
think he meant better than Antonio Brown in the fact that the off-the-field antics won't happen.
Yeah, that he has the same kind of skill level, but the off-the-field antics won't be a problem, therefore better.
What the fuck?
And he said that a little bit, paired with, don't look at the PFF stats. Look at the watch him play. Watch how skilled he is. Look at his talent. Don't
look at PFF.
The kind of raw stuff you won't see by looking at numbers. So I'm curious, from the other side of this perspective, what is Zay Flowers' player comp?
I went with T.Y. Hilton as a player
not bad.
comp. I think that's
good.
Yeah.
I still do worry about his size. For Antonio Brown, I think he was about an inch taller. I think Tony Brown's 5'10", Zay 5'9". But the wingspan different. Zay Flowers has a limited catch radius. I think he has 29-inch arms, whereas Antonio Brown's were, I believe, 31. So that's
4 inches.
That's a big difference in terms of just balls you can get to outside of your frame.
That's true.
That's the worry I have with him, is that the areas of the football field he can be effective are just not the same as where Antonio Brown might have been. But it's not impossible, right? There's guys, Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, Tyler Lockett. There are guys in that mold with small wingspans who can still produce. You just got to be a heck of an athlete. So I believe in Zay Flowers. I think he's a damn good wide receiver. I just see him more as kind of a vertical threat who is not really ever going to be your complete number one type of wideout.
Do you think Zay Flowers will be the first wide receiver off the board?
Man, this wide receiver class is tough. I don't think so. Truthfully, I think it's going to be I think it's Jackson Smith and Jigba. I just think he has the highest floor. And receiving cores nowadays, you pay for that floor, right? You gladly get a guy, even if his floor is, I think his floor is like a good, solid number 2.
Yeah.
A lot of teams are desperate for that. Just teams are trying to stockpile weapons. So I think he ends up being the first wide receiver. But after that, I couldn't tell you. It really is a wide receiver class that, looking around other people's rankings, talking to people I trust, respect about wide receiver scouting, all over the map. Everyone's all over the map. And it's kind of indicative because it's not a good class. There's not enough talent. There's not enough top-end talent is why that is. But I've really seen everyone have different answers to who's the best wide receiver, pretty much outside Jackson Smith and Jigba.
So I'm just going to go out on a limb and say you're not saying Zay Flowers is AB 2.0 on the field?
On the field.
On the field?
On the field.
Okay.
Big caveat there.
That's a big. Felipe thinks Antonio Brown's the best receiver of all time, so that's tough to live up to.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we've seen from Antonio Brown, I just think it's one of those things where we said, like, why can't you compare these quarterbacks to these amazing, like the Patrick Mahomes? It's like the same thing. This guy came out here last week, sat right in front of me and told me that Zay Flowers was going to be the next Antonio Brown. Come on, bro. Give me somebody more realistic. You can't do that.
Well, can you pitch why you think Antonio Brown's the greatest receiver ever, real quick?
Real quick.
Well, I just think he's
On the field.
as complete. Well, I don't know why we're doing this now, but I mean,
I'm just
I think
curious
he's
what a
very-
professional, analyst thinks of this take in general.
Well, I'm sure that if we looked at Antonio Brown's PFF grades, maybe Mike can check me, but and time he played. But I think he's just a complete receiver. Does it all from all over the field. I think when you talk about like smaller receivers, it's can they play inside, can they play outside? Because a lot of guys are limited to inside. Antonio Brown could play literally everywhere. He played with multiple quarterbacks, produced with everybody. So I love AB, but that's just me.
On the field.
On the field.
On the field.
On the field.
I think he's
Same with Deshaun.
I think he's probably, since Calvin Johnson retired, the best wide receiver. I would take him over Julio over the past decade. Obviously, when they were both on the field, I just think he was, as you said, like he was more versatile. He could do everything. Truly, and the size really never was an issue.
You brought it up, so I have to ask. We've had this, and we can do this quickly. Calvin or Julio? Which one are you taking?
Oh, I think my answer right there, Calvin. Calvin was
Smart man.
different cat. Yeah.
Eye test, just no one like him, man.
Hey,
Nothing.
scouts. They speak to each other.
That's just me and him are just on par with the.
Yeah.
Wait,
scouting.
Matan, quickly. Do we have JSN on this list
Yes,
or no?
that was going to be my next name.
Oh, wonderful. I'm very curious.
No, yeah. So who is the player comp, the NFL player comp for Jackson Smith and Jigba?
I went with Julian Edelman. I think they're very similar, just usage-wise. Edelman was he wasn't solely a slot, but that was obviously where he probably did his best work. But like you could play him outside too. And I feel similarly about JSN. That neither is elite deep speed guy, but you ask him to run any underneath or any intermediate route, and they pretty much get open at will. So that's where, like, if you go look at the testing of the two, also they're like damn near identical. Besides, I think JSN's like 2 inches taller, but they're same weight, same 40. I think like within a tenth of a second on the 3-cone short shuttle too. Like they move the same way. So that was my comp for him.
3-cone drill.
3-cone drill.
Hey, 3-cone drill is important. All right. You heard.
As a receiver though. Yeah, exactly. As a receiver though, Julian Edelman, I think I remember this correctly, right? Because he was a quarterback at Kent State, right, in college. Came into the league, and I remember Bill Belichick used to use him on special teams, would use him on as like a safety in some packages on defense. It wasn't until like a couple of years after that he really built up his game to like that starting receiver caliber for the Patriots. Whereas JSN, like you said, the floor for him is a really solid number 2 receiver. So how much further along is he at this point in his career than Julian Edelman was entering the NFL? Would you say?
Yeah, so I mean, Julian like developed into that guy. Like I'm comparing him to like later career Julian, and that's the thing. That's why I think Jackson Smith Jigba. That's why Brian Harline's wide receiver coach is going to bat for him over guys like Chris Olave and even Garrett Wilson, who obviously with 1,000-yard receivers is rookies. It's that this guy he gets it right, and I think you're seeing more and more that winning in the NFL nowadays. Whether it's Amon-Ra St. Brown, whether it's Cooper Kupp. the guys that understand leverage, the guys that are shifty. It's not necessarily pure straight line speed that's getting the job done consistently. So that's why I have him, as a really high grade in this draft class. I just think he's a very safe pick at wide receiver.
He's bigger than it looks too.
Well, we just went through quarterbacks, wide receivers, a lot of good prospects in both positions. Do you want to ask your question you had?
About Jordan Addison?
No, about ranking the
Oh, yeah. So we, all four of us don't really know shit about shit. We like to shoot the shit. But when it comes to shooting the shit, we very much debate wide receiver rankings, something that is somewhat controversial. I'm curious, as someone that probably has the most credibility on this podcast right now from a PFF standpoint.
It's not probably.
100%. Most
It's 100%.
I was trying to give more credit to Jack as a scout, but it was
Okay, it's 95.5.
exactly. That's what I'm saying. I'm
yeah.
trying to give more credit, probably. But as someone that has a lot more credibility than us to speak on ranking wide receivers as a member of PFF, what would be your top 5 wide receiver rankings going into this season?
So in the entire NFL.
NFL.
Oof. Okay, going into the season, I'm still partial to Tyreek Hill. If I'm drafting any wide receiver, I think he is just the biggest game changer, right? He basically, he dictates coverages, he dictates what you have to do, and maybe he's not the most complete, but every single play you're worried about. After that, I'd probably go Justin Jefferson.
Wait, does that mean Tyreek? Does that mean Tyreek's number 1?
Yeah, Tyreek 1. Tyreek Hill 1.
Fuck yeah!
Justin Jefferson 2. Obviously, hard to argue with Justin Jefferson and everything he's done. And just because I would have probably had Devontae over Jefferson, maybe like early last year, Devontae's getting up there. I'd probably go Devontae 3, probably then Stephon Diggs 4. And then after that's tough because I love A.J. Brown.
Ooh.
Obviously produced off the charts last year in Philadelphia. But I also think like Jalen Waddle is insane also. Jalen Waddle's basically Tyreek Hill. But
What about Jamar Chase? Where's Jamar Chase?
maybe not quite as high end. I love Chase. I just think he's a little one tricky, or just like maybe a little bit more limited in like the route trees he's running. He's like slants, goes, posts, money on those. I don't think he's him and DK Metcalf are very similar in my eyes, and like what their role is, and that you're not really going to go out on a limb and do too much more with them. So,
Hey, Felipe. Felipe.
I might go Jalen Waddle 5.
Adam! Hey, Felipe, how does it feel to not know shit about football? Because you said Jamar is better than
easy to say that to
Tyreek
him when
and Waddle and everyone.
it's really easy to say that
For
when
a
he's
little
in Florida.
context for you, Mike, Adam's obviously a huge Dolphins fan here. He's been using specifically PFF stats to back up why Tyreek is the best wide receiver in football, and picking and choosing on some of those stats just to show which are his best things. But nonetheless, he's been doing it, and now you are validating his entire take. And yeah,
I'm curious actually. What about Cooper Kupp? Like when he's healthy?
Yeah, I love Kupp. I just think he's a little limited. I think you can obviously put a high volume pass game towards him, but it's kind of a one note route tree that he's running from the slot. You're not going to do too much more from him, but he's very good. I mean, he's probably just sitting outside that top 5, right? So I'd probably throw A.J. Brown right in that mix, Jamar Chase then right in that mix, and then that's probably where I'd go Cooper Kupp.
D-Hop maybe?
Yeah, D-Hop.
D-Hop's just getting up there a little too much. 3 years ago, slam dunk top 5. I think now just the injuries and the age caught up to him.
Yeah.
fair.
Quickly, so are you saying Jamar Chase is slightly overrated for those that put him at 1 or 2?
No, I wouldn't say that. It's more just what you value, because if I want to run a pure go ball on the outside, he's who you're picking, right? I don't think anyone else in the NFL is better at that. But I just think that's a limited skill set. And like if he wasn't with one of the best go ball throws in the NFL, he might not produce nearly as much as he does.
I'm looking at you, Felipe.
Clap back, Felipe. Come on.
Huh?
I said clap back. Come on.
Oh, I mean, I'm not a huge Chase guy either. I mean, I don't know why you guys are making me a Chase guy. I like Chase. I think he's that's all it is. I think my number 1 receiver I've always said is Devontae Adams. So I like Adams a lot.
Yeah, that's a good pick, Felipe. All right. I mean, now that we've moved to just like full on NFL topics, yesterday Jalen Hurts signed the biggest contract in NFL history. A few questions for you. First of all, I mean, we'll do this as a factor cap because this, it is caps off. So factor cap, Jalen Hurts is overpaid.
Ooh, balance. I think it will turn out to not be overpaid in the long run. But I'll say, if you just relatively stack up the contracts as it stands right now, he's the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. He's objectively not the best quarterback in the NFL. So from that perspective, if you're ranking him to quarterbacks, he's not overpaid. If you're ranking him to like his impact versus the salary cap, I don't think so.
Where would you rank him in that top, 5 to 10 quarterbacks range then? Because I feel like he's kind of been fringe top 5 after last year for some of us that we've talked about it a little bit, but I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, so I'm taking even if I'd still take Aaron Rodgers over him right now.
Over
just I think Rodgers didn't have obviously talent around him. But if I'm even just we're going just quarterbacks I'd start a franchise with, I'm taking Joe Burrow ahead of him. I'm taking Patrick Mahomes ahead of him. I'm taking Josh Allen ahead of him. I'm taking Justin Herbert ahead of him. Trevor Lawrence ahead of him. Am I at 5 right now? So he's outside the top 5 in terms of quarterbacks I'm starting. So at that point, when you're the highest paid quarterback in the NFL and you're outside the top 5 that you start a franchise with, that's a little. So
you're saying despite being the highest paid quarterback in football, Jalen Hurts is not a top 5 quarterback for you, even remotely?
Yes, that's correct. You could clip that.
Clip it.
I just wanted to make it clear.
Clip it. I agree.
Jalen Hurts not a top 5 QB.
No, I agree.
I don't think that's a crazy take. By the way, we're saying it's not a super hot take. Not. I don't think that's a crazy take at all.
Herbert,
he's amazing.
Tiny bit.
And again, I said this the other day. For the system that the Eagles have, he is the guy, and I think
Mahomes would be a little better. Probably.
I think it's. I think we jumped to saying Lamar just could plug in and do the same, and I don't necessarily think that's the truth because they've built this incredible system around specifically Jalen Hurts, and that's why they're paying him because for them he is that valuable. But I agree if we're talking just ranking quarterbacks as quarterbacks on their own, he's not the top 5.
I just love the.
I want to bring it back to the factor cap, in which I'd say cap. Yesterday I probably would have said fact, but after looking through the numbers and like I said, as a self-proclaimed cap expert, that
loves numbers.
The cap hit at the end of the day is all I really care about because it ain't my money. It's Jeffrey Lurie's money that's shelling that out. So if I'm looking at the cap hit, it's will overpaying a quarterback affect my ability to win a Super Bowl, which I think we're going to talk about. But if you look at the cap hits over the next 4 years, his cap hit is $6 million, $13 million, $21 million, and then $31 million. Basically, over the first 3 years of Jalen Hurts' deal, his cap hits are equivalent to Daniel Jones' cap hit this year. So, again, to come back to it, I don't think he's overpaid because also you factor in the fact that Joe Burrow's going to get a deal. Justin Herbert's going to get a deal. Trevor Lawrence is going to get a deal. Lamar's going to get a deal. So all of this is going to push Jalen Hurts down. So sure, average annual value, guarantees, it all looks like a lot. But at the moment, it's overhyped. But in a year or two, it's going to look like absolutely nothing. They did the right thing. I agree with you. He's the quarterback to run their system. So under the term of fact or cap, is he overpaid? I will say cap.
Value
sure, because of the numbers.
Because of the numbers.
Cap.
Mike, I'm curious. When Jalen Hurts came out of college, what was your analysis of him coming out?
I was actually probably higher on him than most. I think I had him somewhere in the 50s or early 60s on the PFF board, so kind of right where he came off. It was you bought into the improvement, right? I think that was the biggest thing with him. Even his senior year when he was still a Heisman finalist, he still was kind of inaccurate. He didn't have a power arm by any means. He still has one of the weaker arms in the league probably, but the improvement you saw from freshman year to sophomore year to then obviously to a senior at Oklahoma, it was very easy to buy into the personality. And so that's where I had him. And I think that was kind of his first and second year in the league. He was not that great, right? And he really did. But you saw, again, he continued to improve. And I think that's one of the underrated things about quarterback is that it's such a learned skill, a lot of it. A lot of it is, just learning how to play a game, right? And learning how to play efficiently within that game. And it's not something that just you get overnight. And a lot of guys aren't willing to put in that work and don't have the mental capacity to do so. But Hurts obviously has. And has done it. So that's how I feel. Like that's why you give him this money. That, and also the fact that after like the YouTube deal, the cap's going to blow up. So I think they did that now because next season the cap might raise like $30 million from what it was at this year. It might be the biggest year-on-year raise ever. And so once that happens, every agent's going to be like, oh shit, now the price of everyone just went up. So I think they're buying into the low end of that before we see a ton of raises in caps around the league.
Probably smart.
Is that playing a part in Lamar Jackson's deal right now?
Possibly. I think the fact is that just like people don't want a guy who's as injured as he. Like teams don't want the injury risk of Lamar Jackson right now. And now after the draft, if someone doesn't get a quarterback, I bet he gets an offer sheet from somebody. But just no one's going to give you $150 million guaranteed when you miss 4 or 5 games a year. You know, that's just. And after the debacle that went down last year in the playoffs, where people thought he could play and still doesn't, that's one where just a lot of teams are looking at that situation and saying, I just don't even want to touch it, right?
Damn.
And that's why those teams will stay poverty franchises. I mean, Lamar Jackson he's arguably a top 5 quarterback, and yet he has never been supported in any way with talent and weapons around him. I understand the injury concerns, but if we look at Jalen Hurts' contract, I mean, Jalen Hurts had one fantastic year, and you just shell out money to become the highest paid player in NFL history. If we would have gave Lamar Jackson a contract after his MVP season, that contract would have looked like Patrick Mahomes' contract. And over the first 2 years, Lamar Jackson missed less games than Jalen Hurts missed over these first 2 games. The point is, Lamar didn't miss games. I get it right now. It's been 4 years, and it's a lot different. But at the same time, I just think Lamar's value has been so devalued based off of these injuries, when in actuality, there's so many other factors and a lot of context that needs to be added to the Lamar situation. And I think he's a special talent.
Should come to Miami.
He should come to Miami. I mean, how many times I got to say it?
All right. I got another factor cap here that sort of we touched on and Adam started to hint on. But factor cap, having a superstar quarterback will hold back teams from winning a Super Bowl.
Cap.
Do you want to shed more light on that again? You started to explain it before.
Shout out to one of our followers on Instagram. He actually commented this and suggested it. We can put his thing down below. I don't know what exactly it is. But this is the exact reason I'm saying cap, because Jalen Hurts' salary cap hit rankings from 2023 to 2026 will look like this. 25th in the NFL for quarterbacks, 19th in the NFL for quarterbacks, 19th for cap hits for quarterbacks in the NFL, and then 10th. There's a legit chance he plays this contract out without ever being top 10 in a salary cap hit at the position. So, again, I come back to it. This idea that they're getting all this money, it's relative to what the cap is going up, similar to what Mike said. There's going to be a huge deal with, that YouTube and Red Zone deal kicking in. It's not our money. So I think this idea that, they can't win without, being a quarterback on a rookie deal. There's not many quarterbacks that have actually been able to win a Super Bowl on a rookie deal either. So it goes both ways. I just think it's a cap.
Yeah, anytime you're talking about, having to win a Super Bowl as your criteria for, whether to pay a quarterback or not, it's such a small sample. Like there's only 10 guys in the past 10 years, right? And most of them are named Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes. So it's
Bingo.
If you're just basing it off of that, you're going to make bad decisions. I do think there is probably a tier where you want to pay guys top dollar and a tier where you don't. If you're paying Derek Carr in a similar tier as you're paying, say, Mahomes, Allen, whatever, you're in trouble. If you're paying Kirk Cousins that, you're in trouble. You're paying, any quarterback in that tier, you're in trouble. But I do think that tier is growing. And Ryan Tannehill's in that tier, and he may even be available for cheap. So I think that teams are starting to realize that and aren't paying these mid-tier quarterbacks top end money. But if you do have the elite guys, you pay them. You live with it, and you have to live with some roster limitations. But they just make your life so much easier. You don't have to have great rosters around guys like Joe Burrow, around guys like Justin Herbert to still make the playoffs.
What do you think about Daniel Jones's contract then?
I mean, it was a disaster, right? If I'm a Giants fan, that was worst case scenario for me. That was just he's so firmly in that tier I just talked about that
No.
I don't see him getting past the guy's never won more than 10 games.
Mike, we were having such a nice time together.
Giants fan, if you didn't pick up on that one.
Big Giants fan. I don't need to argue about it. I do think Daniel Jones will keep getting better, but that's just me being a biased Giants fan. Who knows?
Wait, Felipe, you saying fact or cap?
Well, how was it phrased again?
Having a superstar quarterback will hold back teams from winning a Super Bowl.
Cap, man, it's hard to win in this league without a superstar quarterback. You need one. I mean, and as Adam said, if you can manipulate the salary cap situation, then I think you're okay. Quick answer.
Nice.
That is a quick answer. All right, we'll wrap up on a couple of questions that are back to draft related that we wanted to ask you. Mike, in your professional opinion, and this is a moment of prediction here, who do you think will be the biggest steal in this year's NFL draft? That's question one.
Okay.
And is it Stetson Bennett?
Answer that, and then I'll ask you a question two.
I'll say, trying to think of guys who are going to go. I'll say I love the Army edge rusher, Andre Carter. I think he's going to be the biggest steal in this draft. I think he goes like day 3.
Shout out a man that
But I think he's really talented and really kind of got screwed by the fact that Army does not have a weight program that's it's not even just they have a weight program, but it is not like his training regimen is not like what it takes to be a professional athlete.
Yeah, Armstrong.
And so he's just so physically underdeveloped that if you just get this guy in an NFL weight room for 2 years, I think he's going to be a standout at the next level. You're going to have to wait a while until he puts on the requisite muscle. So that's one of the guys I love if I'm taking a shot in the 4th round.
I was gonna say, I feel like Army. I think there's the thing like Army, Navy, Air Force. They're not allowed to have a certain percentage like body fat or something like that. So they can't get like you look at all their linemen. That's why they run the triple offense because like they can only be like 250 or 260.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, it's crazy. So that's why it's like
Army strong.
And then
But then if he puts on NFL muscle and weight gain and everything, yeah.
And then my other question, I actually thought of another thing we wanted to ask as well, but I'll stick to this one first. Who do you think the biggest bust in the NFL draft will be? I don't mean to have shit on anyone, but
relative to where they're supposed to go.
Who are you the most worried about? Who are you the most worried about?
I'm worried about C.J. Stroud, honestly.
Ooh.
I don't.
More than Richardson.
Especially if, he goes first and has to go to Carolina and the weapons they have, or I guess lack of weapons they have, and, the offensive line that's just fine, but nothing close to what he had at Ohio State. I would worry about him. I guess the quarterback's not fair, though, because most of them don't work out. That's every year.
Yeah.
So I think outside of that, the guy I'd worry about, I kind of worry about Tyree Wilson. I just think he's so raw, and he's 5 years into his collegiate career. And now he's improved from where he was early in his career. If you go back and watch his, I think it was Texas A&M tape when he was back before he transferred, he looked like he just didn't know what he was doing. he looked like he was like how high school guys' tape looked. But he's still on tape. It's just I worry about him ever turning into a refined pass rusher. And now he's a freak of nature, but that's one guy where I could see him just never really taking that next step.
I feel like that's a position where the league tends to take a little bit more shots at because, a lot of times, pure athleticism will translate right to success. Was it him that you compared to your player comp was Jason Pierre-Paul?
Yes. Yeah. Just because he's a freak, right? He's over 7 foot wingspan, and he is really strong. And I think he's going to be a solid run defender, but obviously he's not getting drafted there to just set the edge. You better make an impact as a pass rusher, but I agree. That's the edge rushers that do bust are the ones who are super tooled, because that's what goes top 10. You better have 34-inch arms. You better be 6'4". You better be explosive, but who just don't know what the hell they're doing. And I think he fits in that bucket of guys that you're just a little more worried about than maybe the Aiden Hutchinsons of the world, who it's that guy knows how to play football. Maybe not a great athlete, but he knows what he's doing.
I'm actually curious because I feel like we didn't get to touch on it earlier. What is your pro comp for Will Anderson? Because I feel like he's one of the best rushing prospects that we've seen leading NCAA in sacks the last 2 years.
Oh man, who did I go with for him? I'm trying to think. Let me look real quick.
Pull it up.
Pull up your rankings.
There should be a.
I
feel
went
like
with
he's gonna
Randy
be
Gregory.
crazy.
That's who I went with.
Randy
Who was it?
Gregory.
I said Randy Gregory. I
Oh.
said stronger Randy Gregory.
Pony up.
So a little bit more physically. So Randy Gregory was
He's nice.
like 235 coming out. So just I think of Randy Gregory, but then like he puts on 15 pounds of muscle. That's how I feel about Williams.
That's insane.
And less.
And people
injuries.
forget Randy Gregory was one of the premier guys in that class, and obviously he would have gone a lot higher today. I mean, he had like the off the field like weed issues and stuff like that, which wouldn't be an issue today. So that's lofty.
Last draft question for you. Relative to the positions and obviously how deep it is, what's the best position in this entire class?
I think it's tight end. It's probably the best tight end class I've scouted. Started this obviously 2014.
Shout out Notre Dame.
PFF. Great college, but there's I don't love first round tight ends. There's probably 2 first round tight ends in Dalton Kincaid from Utah, Michael Mayer from Notre Dame, and then there's probably like 7 day 2 tight ends. And most classes you'll get like 5 guys in the rounds 1 through 3, and then most go on day 3. This class actually has top end talent. It's got depth. It's a really good tight end class.
That's great for fantasy football. There have been no tight ends.
There's like 5.
There's just like you got Travis Kelce, and then it just falls
Such a
off
drop-off.
with respect to George
Chill.
Kittle all around. But like from a receiving standpoint in a receiving league, it's Travis Kelce then everyone else. Is there anyone in this class from the tight ends perspective that could be close to contending to Travis Kelce as a receiving threat?
I think Dalton Kincaid, his hands are awesome. And I think he had like 16 broken tackles after the catch last year, which is for tight ends pretty damn good. He's really good. I think Kincaid's your best receiving prospect. Kyle Pitts was obviously freakier, but I think Kincaid's more NFL ready, plug and play could be good. Now maybe not 1,000 yards right out the gate like Pitts did, but Pitts was like they had no one else to throw to in that offense year 1. So I think Kincaid's a really high floor.
What about when Brock Bowers comes out? Do you think he's going to be that next dude that's like, holy shit? Because he's a freak.
Yeah, Bowers. I mean, people might even just like call him a wide receiver, right? Because he's going to run 4.4, and he moves like a wide receiver, and he's only like 235, 240.
He's insane.
So he's gonna be a top 10 pick. That he's a different animal.
Do you think him or Kyle Pitts will be the bigger, I guess, tight end prospect going into the draft then? Because Kyle Pitts was super hyped up.
Oh my God, yeah.
Pitts is still like the prototype physically because he had 7-foot wingspan, 4.4, 38-inch vertical or whatever it was, just ticking every box physically. Bowers is probably more NFL ready. He's run and been more productive throughout his career than Pitts was, but Pitts was like the ultimate wild card or the ultimate lottery play, right? He was the guy with the highest upside theoretically. Even if Bowers, might not have that high upside, he might be a better NFL pro, but Pitts is like no one would probably take Bowers over Pitts just because Pitts has so much untapped potential.
He's a freak.
All right, Mike, last question, and then we'll let you go. Who's the sleeper team for the Super Bowl this year in the NFL?
Oh, no. I want to say, I don't want to gas them up too much, but I want to say the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah!
Oh, my God.
Mike, did we just become
the
best friends?
They've made.
Fuck.
Now, obviously, Tua and his brain is a big brain health.
You're
Is a
correct.
big part of this. But like they did the things they needed to do on defense, right? You got Jalen Ramsey.
Yep.
You got a lockdown corner that crossed from Xavier Howard. You got an off-ball linebacker in David Long, who I
Bingo.
think's awesome as a blitzer. And now, obviously, they don't have too much draft capital, but I think they're in a great position to add either like another wide receiver or speed running back to this mix that I could see them making a run. It's obviously AFC's loaded, but they're right in the mix.
I mean, Mike, you're one of the most intelligent people that I've ever spoken with. I mean, you speak with grace. You speak with class. There's pure intelligence. I mean, you
welcome
just
on
nailed
every
everything
time.
on the head. I mean, you know ball, as they would say. You know?
Apparently we don't.
We don't. I do.
Mike, thanks for coming on, man. It's been an
Appreciate
absolute
it.
pleasure
This is
picking your
awesome.
brain. We're very excited for the draft next week. We're going to be out there in Kansas City, so if you are listening at home, definitely come find us in Kansas City at the NFL Draft. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube. Go to thegameday.com for any of the best sports betting advice, all that jazz. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Peace. Thanks, Mike.
Sweet.
See you.
Subscribe.
Subscribe. Subscribe. Subscribe. Subscribe. Subscribe.
Subscribe.
And go to thegameday.com for all your best odds and promos.